Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other like-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Welcome everybody to Nightlight. This is going to be one of my favorite shows. It's also going to be a very unusual one, unique in many ways. We're going to be reading, talking about a book by Jim Willis. And most of you know that I have a fascination with his books. We've done 4 or 5 of them here on the show, and we've had lovely, lovely talks with the man. He's just a font of wisdom and all sorts of cool stuff. Unfortunately, he's not with us tonight. He's in another realm, another dimension. The Lord knows where he is, but he is definitely not on the earth plane anymore, and we do mourn his loss. I wanted to tell you a little bit about him. He was a theologian, historian, and musician. He earned his bachelor's degree from the Eastman School of Music and a master's degree from Andover Newton Theological School. He was an ordained minister for over 40 years, and while serving as an adjunct college professor in the fields of comparative religion and cross-cultural studies, he was the host of his own drive time radio show and part-time musician. His concern for spiritual growth in modern-day society prompted a series of lectures on historical studies and contemporary spirituality. And upon retirement, I know sometimes when you retire and you write over 20 books, it doesn't sound like retirement to me, but upon retirement, he was determined to confront the essential mystical reality that has inspired humankind since the very beginning of time. A background in theology and education led to his writing more than 20 books on religion, the apocalypse, cross-cultural spirituality, and arcane or buried cultures. Specializing in research bridging lost civilizations, suppressed history, and the study of earth energy, dowsing, and out-of-body experiences. Obviously, a second career, totally, and one that he took all of us on with all of his books. The plethora that he's written, the lost civilizations, near-death experiences, Akashic fields, censoring God, supernatural gods, American cults, Armageddon Now, the religion book, ancient gods, hidden history. They go on, and I've read most of them, and many of them we've done here on the show, and we have totally enjoyed his knowledge, his wisdom, and the fact that he was always willing to sort of go off topic just a little bit and play with me in the what-ifing. So he will be dearly, dearly missed. And especially because absolutely this last book that has been published by Visible Ink Press, Lost Loot, Cursed Treasures, and Blood Money, Dark Minds, and True Crimes, it's a book you got to buy. And I don't usually push the books this way, but it definitely is, for me, one of the more pleasurable books I've read in a long time, because it touched every sweet spot I've got as far as things that I've researched, and of course, who can not look into buried treasure. It covers legendary treasures, mythical robberies, lost riches, buried plunder, and fabulous wealth, hidden dangers, ancient curses, and deathbed jinxes. Captivating tales of lost fortunes, hidden caches, the eternal allure of wealth, and the heartbreak of mysterious curses. Read about the pursuit of riches, turning to grief in this mesmerizing story collection, a thrilling exploration of the world's most intriguing and dangerous treasure hunts. Lost loot, cursed treasures, and blood money collects dozens of fascinating stories of reward, riches, greed, and ruin. And I think that the most fascinating thing about it is every single one of the instances that he covers, we've talked about here on the show from 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 oh gosh, the Lost Dutchman Mine to John Dillinger. We have not done D.B. Cooper because that's been overdone. To the Cursed Aztec Treasure, to to the Knights of the Golden Circle, to all of the elements of buried treasure still in this country and not found yet. So that it's all still out there. So um, tales of bewitching regions and hunts go wrong, yet but yet hope springs eternal. Lost loot unfolds like a treasure map, but beware the hidden deadly obstacles. And they're out there. Certainly, they're out there, and a lot of the treasure seekers that are out there today have run across many of them, including, but not exclusively, of course, Oak Island. But we'll get into that in a little bit. So, because we don't have Jim here, we have the good fortune of having his publisher here. And I think this is the very first time that we've had a publisher, I mean, a real publisher, um, sitting in on an interview, and he has worked with Jim on many of his books. We have Kevin Hile here, and he edited this book and many of the other books. Apparently, so we have him to grill just slightly about this wonderful, wonderful book. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Hi, Barbara. Thanks for having me. And just to be clear, I'm managing editor at VIP. I'm not the publisher.
Oh, okay. Well, that's still we haven't done a managing editor either, so you're still in there as the first.
I'm still up there.
Yes. And for those who don't know what an editor does, what does an editor do?
Oh, goodness. Well, basically, my publisher comes with me and says, we have this idea for a book. We have the author here, and the author turns in a raw manuscript, and I organize everything, get it proofed and edited and designed, and take it basically from raw manuscript to finished published form. That's the Reader's Digest version.
So are
And
you
that
the one?
process usually takes about 8 months for a book to get
Whoa.
from one
Are
point to
you
the other.
are you the one that does the proofreading?
No, I do some proofreading, but we do hire people outside to do proofreading. We proof it in the manuscript stage and the galley stage. The indexer often does a lot of proofing, and I also vet it and review it, and sometimes rearrange it. I actually did some rearranging and stuff in the Lost Loot book. I can get into that later if you like.
Well, it's just it's fascinating to have someone that comes on from your viewpoint of
Mhm.
publishing a book. I've been very fortunate. I had I published three, and none of them were as laboriously put together as this one was. Jim did incredible research on all of these different areas that he covers,
Mhm.
and I wonder with somebody like Jim who has done 20 books or so, how he had the time to do all of the research that had to go into all of these books. Um, is it? I mean, what he's done here is amazing. He's taken
Right.
all of and most of these have to do with things that are in the United States or off the coast of the United States.
Mhm. Well, the book was originally conceived as kind of a travel book. where he had arranged it by location and was hoping people would take it and say, well, now I'm in Texas. I'm going to check out some of the sites along the Texas coast of where the pirates were and that sort of thing. And now I'm in Tennessee. I'm going to look at caves and what's there. And I'm in Minnesota. I'm going to look at the last place Dillinger was before,
Hmm.
and all that sort of thing. And I felt that it was probably worked better organized by subject. So that's why I put all the because on one part of the book originally you're talking about pirates, and then like halfway through the book you're back with pirates. I put all the pirate stuff together. I put all the stuff about hidden treasures and caves together. I put the stuff about gangsters and robbers into one chapter. So that's kind of one of the things I did.
One thing that would be really interesting would be if you did a tour in which you took people to all of these places and you did a loop of the United States. And
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he does talk about tourist sites and stuff like that you can go to. And yeah, there's lots of stuff on pirates, for example, and a lot of things like um, some places where like the gangsters hung out were turned into restaurants and inns, and you can go there and hear about the gangsters and have dinner. You know?
well, yeah, where Dillinger was found, or they descended upon the hotel. I think that they still have bullets in the walls, and they show people around,
Mm,
and I think they even have some of his stuff still there. They make quite a deal of about the fact that he had, was it 20,000 or something like that in a suitcase, and the suitcase has never been found.
yeah.
So
Oh,
it's a matter of, somewhere up there in the northern woods, there's a
mhm.
rotten suitcase with a lot of money in it.
Yeah.
Probably the money is not any good anymore either, but
Well, we're talking 1930s money. I'm not sure if you could actually convert that to modern money or not. It's not like Confederate dollars, but maybe it's still worth something. I don't
well,
know.
it's
It's
kind
a
of
good
like
question.
the DB Cooper stuff. They have
Hmm.
found bills, partially, moldy and crumbly and everything else, but they found bills that were in that cachet that he
Yeah,
had with him.
yeah,
Um, I personally think he didn't survive, but
yeah.
that's just my gut.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But they have found quite a number of that young boy that found the cash on the beach, and
Hmm.
then somebody else found some as well a little bit later. So that, or before, I know there were two caches that were found,
Yeah. I thought it was
and
just a few $100s. I didn't think it was a whole lot, but and when the money was so compromised and destroyed, it obviously they couldn't, cash that in. So
yeah, I just what an amazing person to do something like that. And
mhm.
there's recently been I think there's somebody, hunting for adventure or something. It's on TV, and he went through the where DB Cooper would have fallen, parachuted into the woods, and he and another um, somebody who knew the area well tried to make their way out, and could they find food, and could they do it with just what he had, which was a pocket knife and whatever was left from the parachute. and
Right.
and they decided that he could have made it, but it would
Could
have
have.
been yeah, yes, but they had on camping gear and he had on
Hmm.
loafers and a business suit.
That's kind of like
So
the story of the men who escaped Alcatraz and had made a makeshift raft and disappeared into the night. And most people think they drowned because they were never heard of again. So the money that was found initially was by a river, and it could be that D.B. Cooper died, drowned in the
mhm,
river, and the money just floated away somewhere. And,
and rotted.
yeah,
So I
and
guess the real um the thing to this story is, if you're going to rob something, rob gold coins or
well,
doubloons, because they don't rot. They last
yeah,
forever. paper money is worthless once you're, in the wild.
Yeah.
And, all you can do is use it for kindling just about.
Or maybe just do digital robbery. That's,
Not as much
that's what people
fun.
do.
Not
Not
as
much
much fun.
fun. No,
There's
no,
there's
but
no adventure to that. Look at what the Knights of the Golden Circle.
uh-huh.
Now those guys, they had Booth was one of them and Jesse James was one of them. And
Right.
they buried their gold coins or silver
Hmm.
coins in mason jars all over the place to be, picked up later when the South was rising again.
Right.
And I've seen people who are diehard hunters of the loot from the Knights of the Golden Circle because because half of the half of the treasury of the South has never been found.
And my question, I'm showing a little my ignorance here. Don't metal detectors, can't they detect gold coins underground?
Yes, yes,
So I'm curious why nobody's found more using metal detectors, although we still have a
because
lot of ground to cover.
well, yeah, but they're in the
Yeah.
woods and in
Mm.
forests and
Yeah.
a lot of the Knights of the Golden Circle especially had a lot of code words and code pictures and ways of sending people to where the caches were and stuff like that. And there were people that were watching them. Frankly, after this long, if
Mhm.
I had been, and a father to son to son to son, frankly, I would have dug it up and just cashed it in and, quietly, you know, bought an island someplace and, just
Yeah.
lived
Well,
out the rest of my life.
I don't know if you're one of the people who thinks that the Knights of the Golden Circle still exist in some form, and maybe over the generations they communicated where it was, and people later generations picked up the gold and just took off with it.
Well, I know there are still people searching for it. They're still finding signs carved into trees and stuff.
Yeah.
And you're right, yes, of course, metal detector would. It was mason jars. Mason jars have metal lids on them,
Hmm.
so they would be picked up. But there's a whole treasury left to be found.
Hmm.
Now there is that theory that some of it was put into a railroad car, and they were sending it um, across one of the Great Lakes, and the railroad car fell into the Great Lake, and they're still searching for that
Yeah.
with metal detectors
Right.
for the car. And I think that I'm wondering sometimes, is the real treasure the search or finding something at the end of the search?
Right. Well, just going back to the finding gold coins and stuff. I mean, we got to consider all the the fact that most property is privately held or held by the federal government. If you find a mason jar full of gold coins on somebody's private property, it belongs to whoever owns that property. You can't keep it for yourself. So
Well, yes, but a lot of these treasure hunters that are on private property have already made arrangements with the homeowners that, if
mm,
anything of value is found, it will be a split of some sort.
uh,
So they get permission to
yeah,
dig up lawns and everything.
hmm,
Um, but it's when you're talking about a railroad car in the middle of one of the Great Lakes,
right,
that's
right,
that's a lot of gold.
yes,
But I don't know if that would have the same um, deal as the sunken pirate ships that are off the coast, like the Etosha, who
right.
had who had,
Well,
I mean,
I know
so
there was a federal law passed in the 80s that said anything within a certain distance of the shore, a couple miles, if you find something within that border, it belongs to the federal government. If it's past that range, then it can be yours.
yeah,
So
international water, but most of those ships are close enough to the shore so that they
yeah,
are.
yeah,
But I think there wasn't. It may have changed, but you have to
hmm.
have a finder fee of some sort. There has to be something. Because look at the
Well, I don't
Etosha.
know.
Look,
I know, but I believe that I think it's a 1987 law. and it says anything within like 2 miles of the coast. I'm sorry, it belongs to the federal government. So yeah,
How did Gary Drayden get away with that emerald ring that was worth $70,000 that he found on the beach?
what year? When did he find that?
I don't know, but his
Yeah, if it
wife
was
has.
before 1980, before that law, then he'd be
I've
okay.
seen that emerald
Yeah.
ring, and it's a
Uh-huh.
doozy.
Yeah, I think that was before that law was passed. So yeah.
Well, what about the Oak Island people? Now they have some sort of an agreement with the government
Uh-huh. Well,
in
that's
Nova
no, but
Scotia.
yeah, that's Canada. I'm not sure about Canadian laws, but again, they're not looking for gold. They're looking for, the
Oh,
Ark of the
yes, they
Covenant
are.
and
Well, yeah.
the Spear of Destiny, that sort of thing.
You
So
know,
I'm not sure
when
how that applies.
well, also pirate treasure, they think, but
Mm,
I think not. I think that the current theory is that it is the loot from a treasure ship that was supposed to go to Spain, but most of it got sent theoretically to Oak Island. So we're talking coins.
mm,
I mean,
okay.
originally they were looking for Shakespeare's original manuscript, and I think I think Shakespeare, first of all, no, there's a whole thing about Shakespeare wasn't Shakespeare, but any paper has dissolved, I would think.
Oh yeah, any paper would be totally rotted by now, for sure. Yeah.
But they were talking about the candelabra from the temple and all sorts of things, and I thought,
Hmm.
no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Uh, but they also talked about how the Knights Templar may have stopped off at Oak Island and used it
Hmm.
for a while and then went further south, further west, sort of west and south. The theory going now is the Templar treasure is someplace in the west in a cave or something or buried someplace.
Yeah.
But it's what I love about this book and it's I really I hope for Jim's sake that it sells well because it has all of the different things, the treasure hunt type stuff. He's not talking about treasure that's been found. He's talking about treasure that's still missing.
Right.
And so that if one is a if one has to go hunting a treasure, here's a list of a whole bunch of them that haven't been found yet.
Yes. Exactly.
So, get your hat and your whip and go looking, and compass probably.
Yeah. I think about the only thing in this book that's been found is that on that chapter of Forrest Fenn, where the fellow, deliberately hid about $1 million
Yeah.
in the Rocky Mountains and said, go look for it," and that was actually found eventually.
Well, yeah, he wanted people to enjoy the outdoors,
Yes,
which
the
I
thrill of the hunt. Yes.
let me just take 1,000,000 and hide it, it's kind
Yeah.
of like I cannot believe that yeah, and he kept telling people, it wasn't buried, so don't go digging up your neighbor's lawn, and it wasn't
Yeah.
here and it wasn't there, trying to keep people safe, just I
He
think
wanted to
that they
make sure.
didn't.
He said, "I didn't save it, on a precipice or on top of a tree. It's not buried
Yeah,
way in the ground. It was found in the middle of the forest, like next
just
to a
sitting
tree. It
there.
wasn't just sitting there." Yeah.
So there's your answer to, why the Knights of the Golden Circle treasure
Mm,
hasn't been found. It's
yeah.
out
That's
there. I mean, when you look at the amount of forest land that we've got here in this country, it
yes.
it easily could be sitting out there on a pedestal with spotlights, just waiting for somebody to walk in and go, ta-da.
Yeah.
But I think when the Aztec stuff is what really fascinates me,
Mm,
how the story of the Aztecs and how
mm,
they had that respite of time when he went back and got more soldiers and they got their treasure out of there
mhm.
and where they took it to and usually they the theory is that they took it back to their homeland and
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
matter of where is their homeland now.
Well, it's somewhere in the Southwest. I mean, the whole story is, of course, the American Indian people came from Asia originally and through the Bering Strait and migrated down. And makes sense that at one time they settled in what's now the American Southwest and were there for a
Hmm.
while. And for some reason, they continued to head south and ended up in Mexico and South America. Um, but they still had, their homeland back in the Southwest. And so when Cortez came and attacked Tenochtitlan and Montezuma II fell, and they took their gold and valuables and hid them up there, that totally makes sense to me. Yeah.
Well,
So,
yeah, and because it's never been, although there's one one theory that maybe it was found by the Spanish and they melted it all down and then sent it back by ship, but it still doesn't make sense to me. There's too much missing.
yeah.
So because I know
Well,
I go
yeah,
ahead.
Cortez's men were trying to steal it, and of course the Aztecs were fighting back, and a lot of them, dropped their gold and stuff, and they didn't get all the stuff that they tried to grab. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
so
they filled a room with gold,
mhm,
for the first little bit that Cortez got, but
mhm,
um, what has been sent up to the northwest, well, northwest, it's the Arizona, the Utah area in there
mhm, yeah,
is is where they think it is, and
mhm,
it's if it's where people have been looking, they have managed to put water traps in there to the point where you can't get to it. I think the Aztecs didn't want it ever discovered. It wasn't a matter of keep it safe till we can come and get it. It was a matter of nobody's going to get it.
yeah.
And
Well, they probably knew how to disarm the water trap themselves if they ever came back. Wouldn't you imagine?
well, it's kind of you look at that and then you look at Oak Island with the water traps.
Hmm.
I mean, it's similar,
Yes,
but
definitely.
when you look at no pirate had the technology to be able to do those water traps. I mean,
Right.
with all due respect to pirates, they could dig a hole, but beyond that, forget it.
Yeah.
And so the Knights Templar comes in and it makes a great deal of sense. And yet now what they're thinking is it's a duke that was there, but that still doesn't make sense. I'm wondering if maybe there have been several generations of people that have used that island as a treasure vault, so to speak.
Well, there could have been native peoples there before the Vikings and before anybody else from Europe got there. So there
Could
could
be.
be, yeah.
Yeah, but Native Americans didn't dig deep tunnels and stuff like that. They just didn't. They lived on top of the ground. And the only thing is that in that area there are copper mines. So at some time, copper may have been mined there, and that may have been why there were tunnels.
Hmm.
Not necessarily to hide things in, just to get the ore out of the island. But the
So
history.
who are you saying set up the water traps then? I'm
Well, I think it had to be the Knights Templar.
okay.
They're the ones that, after all, come on, they were Templars. They were constructed. They constructed. They
Mm,
built. And how else were they going to get the pine shavings and everything to Oak Island? They had to go south to get the pine husks and stuff like that to stuff in the tunnels to prevent the water from not being able to get through. So I mean, that stuff, the only thing I can think of would be the Knights Templar would have the ships and the
mhm,
ability and the knowledge and all of that.
mhm.
And I do believe, just my own personal belief system is it used to be two islands and they did close it up and and create one island out of the two. But it's sort of like, to what end? I can't. The Knights Templar. No, I mean, they were smart. They were moving the treasure around if they had a treasure.
Hmm.
And there were a number of ships that did leave La Rochelle, so that there were 18 ships, I think, and some of them went up north, and some of them, they went all over. So we might find Knights Templar treasures all over the world. I mean, it isn't, it can't be, it isn't just um, Oak Island. And
Right.
that huge candelabra is still missing somewhere. It
Hmm.
could be, I mean, when they found the Dead Sea Scrolls on the copper tablet, there's a copper tablet that tells where a lot of the treasure from the temple was buried. The only trouble is nobody can read the directions because the topography has changed so greatly over the centuries.
Right.
So they have the map but don't know how to use it.
Uh-huh.
So there's another treasure that's out there, but that's too far to
Yeah.
go. I mean,
Yeah.
if given my druthers and my age, I'd get a metal detector and go to the beaches.
Okay. There still could be quite a few wrecks washed up, a lot of treasure on the shores. Yeah, there could still be something.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
I mean, that emerald ring, you only have to find one.
Yeah.
And when you have a ring that's worth that kind of money,
Hmm.
you never wear it.
Or maybe you could be like the fellow who found the Fabergé egg at the garage sale.
Oh, geez, yeah. Now the Fabergé eggs fascinated me. I did not realize that they had been stolen and that they had been dispersed.
Uh-huh.
And there's still a number of them out there that, I mean,
Yeah,
in
I
this
think there's
country.
like 10 or so that are still missing. Yeah. And each one of them's worth anywhere from 500,000 to several $1 million. So,
Yeah, I would not have there was a day where I would have proudly displayed something like that. Now I'd sell it in a heartbeat.
yeah, I'd be too nervous to have something like that around the house.
Yeah, my life wouldn't be worth anything. I would be so worried about losing it that I would sell it
Yes.
and
It's,
hoping that a museum would do something with it.
mhm.
But your book talks about caves here in Tennessee. I didn't realize we had that many caves here.
Oh goodness, yes, all through that area, Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, Tennessee, Kentucky, riddled with caves, from all the limestone under there. That's all, water erosion and it's created a whole bunch of, which is why also you get some sinkholes problems out there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, there's tons of caves. There are so many miles and miles and miles of caves all through the United States that there could be just who knows what hidden in them.
Well, I know here in Tennessee they're used for illegal stills a lot.
Oh, yeah. Still? They still do
Oh,
stills, huh?
oh my gosh, yeah.
Oh.
I have a neighbor who has an uncle who,
Hmm.
as soon as he gets out of jail, is going to go back to moonshining. And
Really?
yes.
I didn't know that was still going on, really. Okay.
Oh, are you kidding me? Absolutely.
Well, I always figured after Prohibition, there wouldn't be much call for it anymore.
Well, it's an age-old tradition.
Sure,
and
sure. Some families might, brew some stuff for
and
themselves,
and,
but
and well, if you do it for personal use, I think you can almost get away with it. But no, there are
mm,
still moonshiners here.
oh,
Absolutely.
okay.
I mean, there's a part of me that I've never tasted it, and I don't want to taste it enough to buy a bottle.
Uh-huh.
But if I find somebody that has a bottle of real moonshine, I would really like to taste it because
Mm,
um, I managed to watch all of Moonshiners, the series, and I thought, oh my
yeah.
gosh, I got to try this stuff because they were making moonshine out of such exotic stuff. I thought, some of this might be actually very good.
Yeah. You
But
just gotta be a little careful. Some of it's a little too strong.
well, yeah, uh, actually, my sister is a shaman, and
Hmm.
one year she came to visit me, and she said, "You have a whole bunch of um, lemon mint out in your yard. Let's harvest it." And I said, "What for?" mint juleps. What are you talking about? And she said, no, we're going to make elixir. And I
Oh.
said, really? And so we harvested it before it bloomed. We did it in the morning and we dried the dew off of it. Then we shoved it into little glass mason jars and filled the
Mm-hmm.
mason jars with 100 proof or as close as we could get vodka
Mm-hmm.
and set them in a cool, dry place. And once a week, turned them. And then at the end of, I think it was 8 weeks, we took the leaves out and everything. We drained it, put a little honey in it, and put it in jars in the refrigerator. And it's the greatest thing in the world for coughs.
Oh, how about that?
It burns all the way down.
But then you don't cough. But
You don't cough and you
yeah.
sleep well. So, but and I had a number of people say, "Are you making cough syrup?" And it was like, "No, I
Yeah.
just have the one jar and that's it."
I do know a cure for hiccups, though, that's really effective. Um, it's lemon juice and aromatic bitters. And you take a wedge of lemon, put some bitters on there, and suck on it. 3 seconds later, your hiccup's gone.
Wow.
It
And you're
works like
puckered.
magic. I would never have believed it till I tried it, and it totally works.
I will try that next time I get the hiccups for sure.
Yeah.
I think, Leslie, I think I kind of want to briefly talk about now we've mentioned the Oak Island stuff.
Hmm.
That he did go into the Oak Island stuff and he was pretty accurate. I
Yeah.
I loved the fact that he basically he said, I think at the end almost of the book, that the treasure is in the experience of the hunt, not necessarily finding something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you say that to somebody who's hunting a treasure and they're going to look at you like you're crazy because they're after the gold, they're after the jewels, they're after the whatever.
Hmm.
Um, but Oak Island has turned into more of a historical um, exploration than, they're still after gold. They're still looking for a treasure,
Hmm.
but they're still finding other stuff there that talks about different time frames, the cobblestone walkways and things like that go
Yeah.
back to Portugal. So they've and I think the other thing when they went over to forget where it was Italy or someplace in Europe where they were in a prison where Templars were held. There was a cross on the wall that looked exactly like the cross that they found on the beach.
Hmm.
So it does take it back to them, but they're going back into the 15 and 1600s with the material they're finding there. And all of that is precious, but
Sure.
it's not gold.
No, but it does have its own value, and of course, they've made money having 12 years of a TV series, right?
Oh, well, and
That's one way to make money.
well, one has a winery and they're
Uh,
doing well there too, but
yeah.
they had another series where they were thinking to finance some other treasure hunters that were going out on treasure
Mhm.
hunts and stuff. That didn't last very long. But um, there are there are just so many different. Um, the Aztec treasure is another one. There are the Peralta stones. There are looking people are looking for the Aztec treasure in different states, even trying to find out where it could possibly be. And the
Mhm.
ones that I've been watching the Blind Frog Ranch one, and while Jim didn't cover it, it seems to
Okay.
be the most authentic because it does have the different um, cave openings that look like they may have been of the configuration that the Aztecs were talking about, and they've dug up a lot of beads that were Aztec,
Mm-hmm.
so that they definitely some of the indigenous people there, some of their words are Aztec words. So there is a connection there. Now, and they're running into all sorts of water traps. So, we're
Yeah.
thinking, okay, so yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just take dynamite and blow the daylights out of the place and get down to bottom line. I mean,
Wouldn't you be afraid of damaging something valuable though, if you just blew things up? I
probably.
would be. Yeah.
But look at Oak Island. They've been
Uh,
digging the. I mean, that they've got to make. They've made Swiss cheese of the place,
mm,
and they keep running into water,
yeah.
and sooner or later, everything's going to collapse in on everything else, and nobody will ever find the treasure. If there is a treasure there, I don't. I
Mhm.
I don't think there is a treasure there. Um,
Yeah.
I suspect that there probably was at one time. I know at one time they saw bones at the bottom of one of the shafts that they did. So there
Mhm.
is a body there of some sort. But
Well, like you kind of said, like for the Knights Templar, they might have temporarily used that land for to hide some stuff and then moved it later. So,
yeah, I think that's probably what happened.
yeah.
And then other people came in because they have things that goes back to the Revolutionary War. They have the Duke David, and he may have put a treasure there at some point.
Mhm.
Um, and with him, most of the people that were on the ships died. So chances are, if he did leave something there, but there was that Civil War gentleman um, who was a cabbage farmer who bought most of the land on Oak Island, paid for a lot of his stuff with Spanish doubloons, and
Ah,
nobody wondered where it came from.
really? Nobody wondered.
No, and we're talking he bought most of the land on Oak Island. He
Uh-huh.
was a cabbage farmer. He was also one of the richest men in the area, and he
Uh-huh.
bought his supplies with silver doubloons, I think.
Wow. How about
Now,
that? I hadn't heard that.
yeah, no, that was, and to me, it's sort of like sometimes we're so blasé about things. We don't pay attention to the details and things, and
Hmm.
things like that, just kind of waft on by. And where'd he get all those coins?
Yeah.
He had to. He was a farmer. He was digging in the ground. He had to dig them up,
Yeah, that makes
and
sense.
he had enough to be able to pay for his
Yeah.
supplies that he needed. So
Yeah.
I mean, so then we've got the caves here in Tennessee.
Hmm.
Tennessee also has a whole bunch of little people bodies that they dug up a number of years ago. And I mean a number of years, 50, 60 years ago. And at the time when they were digging up giant bones. And um, most of the bones went to the Smithsonian and then were dumped in the middle of the ocean. So the little people
Huh.
bones are not there. There are some supposedly in a museum here, but I haven't been able to find them.
I mean, like of a early hominid species or okay.
Well, the same time frame that there were giants, there were little people at the same time,
Huh.
and they found battlegrounds here in Tennessee. And the farmer dug up a whole bunch of little people bones, and they went to a museum. No big deal. They were
Mm,
stored away and then moved when the museum was sold. And gee, they can't find them anymore.
okay. Is that also on your website? I gotta check that out.
The little people thing, no,
Uh-huh.
that's not.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
but the giant stuff is there. There's a lot of
Okay.
giant material on the website. But I'm still going to hunt down. I found where the museum supposedly is, and I'm going to go over and see if I can, talk to
Hmm.
somebody and say, can you check and see if somewhere in a cardboard box you have these bones of little people, because it would be of interest to everybody.
Yes.
But
Oh, this would be kind of like the species they kind of call like the hobbit species in Southeast Asia that they discovered a few years ago. So it would be kind of along the same
well,
order.
yeah, and in is it Hawaii? They have the little people there that do things at night when nobody's looking because they're kind of
Uh,
deformed.
huh.
Um, And if you really want to get crazy, well, not crazy, but there are the Dropa people in China. 1839, a professor was looking for caves to take his students into. He found these Dropa stones, which were circular stones like a record, and had engravings on the grooves in them. And when they were finally deciphered many years later, it basically was that they had arrived in a ship that was damaged and they couldn't leave. They couldn't fix the ship. They were going to, kind of blend in with the culture there and live out their lives. And there is to this day a tribe called the Dropa who are 3 and 4 feet high.
Hmm.
And the Dropa stones, there were something like 70,000 of them are in a cave that were found that were the records of these people.
Wow.
Nobody knows a lot about that either.
I knew nothing about that.
Oh, the Dropa stones are cool.
Hmm.
So anyhow, but back to Jim's book. The
Yeah.
Lost Dutchman's Mine is another one of them that we have heard, of about how everybody's still looking for it. The Peralta stones come
Hmm.
in here too. People kind of blend the two together sometimes. Never been found. And
Right.
it's not like people haven't been looking. I mean, this is a big country. There are lots of mountains in this country. There's lots of I drove across the country a number of years ago, and there is so much of it that is just empty.
Oh yeah. Everything from the West Coast to the Mississippi River is largely empty with a few exceptions. But I think it's like 90% of the U.S. population either lives on the West Coast or east of the Mississippi. And
Yeah.
so it's, yeah,
So and it was amazing to me how, okay, you can't drop people in the middle of nowhere and expect them to have towns and stuff like that, but at the
right.
same time, there's plenty of land here.
Hmm.
It could be developed. It could be, it's not all farmland.
Hmm.
Um, we've got the Civil War stuff. There's still a lot of it out there, and yeah, I think the Knights of the Golden Circle still exists. I know
Okay.
for sure there are still people looking for that gold. So,
It's kind of like the KKK. There's still a KKK. There's probably still
oh
Knights of the
yeah,
Golden Circle. Yeah.
true. And as far as the ships that have been shipwrecked off of our coast, um,
Hmm.
there are tons of them,
Yes.
and
Hundreds still there. Yes.
and a lot of them had treasure in them because they were looting the Indians.
Right.
So I mean, come on, I mean,
Or from the Civil War, they were stealing California gold that was going to the north, and they stole that. So, but
yeah,
yeah.
and
The
that
problem with,
that
unfortunately, with shipwrecks is it's so expensive to do a dive into a ship, and you have to have lots of investors, and that's pretty tough. But
well,
I'm sure there's tons of gold down there still. Yes.
look at the Titanic.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's miles down, so
Yeah. Yeah.
that stuff is pretty safe.
Hmm.
I think they did pull quite a few of the safes up, and they found that there was nothing in them. And according to um, somebody who wrote um, a number of books on the Titanic, apparently the pursers emptied the safes and took all of the stuff and gave it to the passengers,
Hmm.
before the ship sank, so that it had
Yeah.
been dispersed.
Yeah.
But I just but there's something about being able to be on a beach and dig up magic.
Mhm. Yeah.
That to me, um, I thought some of giving, my grandchildren a metal detector for me,
Hmm.
and then I could, then when they got done with it, I could take it over. But it was pointed out to me that there's just private property around here. It's,
Hmm.
I would run into I would have to get permission of whoever's land I happen to be on, and But I wouldn't even mind that. I think it would be kind of fun to be able to find something that comes from another time.
Yeah.
I mean, Gary Drayden, he knows so much about. He's the metal detector guy that has been on Oak Island and in a number of other places
Hmm.
looking for treasure.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how much we have here in this country that people ignore, that don't pay any attention to. The fact that well, yes, we're a young country, but the land has been here forever. And there
Hmm.
have been cultures here, there have been civilizations here. And
Yep.
it's the same way down in South America, in the Yucatan Peninsula, especially. I mean, huge, huge buildings and towns and cities that
Hmm.
were covered by forests that now are opened, and they have their treasures too that are still to be found. And
Hmm.
it's the same way in Egypt with the black market of all of the antiquities that are being sold there. But this country still has the mystery and the magic and okay,
Hmm.
let's face it, treasure
Yeah.
that people have lost all over the place. And
Yeah. I
it's
often
ma-
wonder about the Clovis culture. We have all these mounds.
yeah,
Has anybody really investigated what's under these mounds from these people who lived, centuries and centuries ago?
absolutely. And they found giants in them.
Have they?
Yes, they
Uh,
have.
okay. This is part I don't know about, so yeah.
Yeah, I'll get you hooked on giants next.
Yeah,
um, yeah, there are a lot of and in some cases, I think the government is trying to keep things under wrap. And
probably.
and with a lot of the gold that has gone missing here in this country.
Hmm.
Um, there was a lot of gold in the bank under the World Trade Center that was removed, I
Hmm.
think, a week before the World Trade Center was attacked. Don't know
Oh,
where that went.
got melted down and somebody has it.
Well, yeah, and I don't know. I just there's something about the element of gold, the gold fever.
Hmm.
Um, I wouldn't mind panning for gold, but
That was fun. I've actually done that. That's a
have
lot
you?
of fun. Yeah, it's kind of relaxing, and no matter what you do, you're going to find a little bit. Everybody finds a little bit, worth a couple dollars. But it's just fun to do. And of
Oh,
course, some of it's pyrite, but oh well.
well, you still get the rush.
Yes.
But no, that's this country has not only it has the gold in it still. I mean, they're
Hmm.
still mining gold here. It's still here. Not only
Yeah.
that, but there are precious stones that are mined still in this country,
Hmm.
sapphires and garnets and not diamonds, but other precious stones are still there are mines here in this country. And there are places where you can go and you can actually dig for your own stones and get your own stones. You pay a price to go in and you get what you keep, and you keep what you
Yeah.
get. And so
Oh.
I think that this culture is there's something about the mystery and the magic of lost treasure, certainly.
Mhm.
But on top of that, learning about what the history is first is so much more important. And this book gives you an idea of some of the major areas that you could, start
Yeah.
looking at, because some of this stuff, especially Knights of the Golden Circle, that's in the woods someplace buried in a hole. They're in mason
Mhm.
jars. They
Mhm.
put the gold coins in mason jars and they buried them. And
Or some
I
of the money that Jesse James stole and hid for them, that sort of thing. Yeah.
yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. He had a lot of it. But when the war was over, half of the treasury from the South has not been recovered.
Yeah. Yeah. When they caught uh, Jefferson Davis, he didn't have anything on him, but when he left, Richmond, he had a lot of gold on him, they say. So where did he stash it before he was caught?
Yes, and when he was caught, he was dressed as a woman too.
Yes, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there. I think the thing. I think this is a great book for people to have and read
Mhm.
because each of the chapters goes into one of these mysteries and treasures that are yet to be found and uncovered, and it gives you kind of a feeling of excitement that there is so much here in this country yet to discover.
Yeah.
That
And
that
there's so much
that.
history in this book too, and some things
Oh
that I
yeah.
didn't know that I learned that, you know,
So
I
so
love the chapter on Meriwether Lewis and
Yeah,
Clark.
that was a good one.
Yeah.
How do you commit suicide twice by shooting yourself twice?
Right, he was shot in the stomach and in the head, and obviously, if he's shooting himself, he couldn't have shot himself in the head and in the stomach. But anybody who's been shot in the stomach, that is extremely painful, and then, I doubt he would then have the presence of mind to then shoot himself in the head.
No.
So,
And he had his diary with him. And when they took off on their expedition
mhm,
to find a passage to the West Coast, they were told to look for Indians that spoke white Indians that spoke English because they were looking for um, how did this go? They were
well,
looking.
if you'll allow me, this is one of my favorite stories.
Go.
Thomas Jefferson believed that the lost tribes of Israel ended up in North America and integrated with the Indians here, and that evidence of this could be found in the native languages. And so this is something I didn't know. I always heard the Lewis and Clark, they went, and explored the territory and opened up, the west toward exploration and settlement. But Lewis was researching Indian languages, dozens of Indian languages, and looking for root words and so forth, and keeping papers on it, and having evidence that these languages had evidence of, roots in the Hebrew language, ancient Hebrew. And so he was gathering all this stuff up, and unfortunately, he was during his last years of his life, he suffered from depression and alcoholism. But he was going back to Washington, D.C., and he was in Tennessee, like 70 miles from Louisville, and he stopped at an inn, and that's when he died from suicide. And all the papers were missing. So I think, that's a story I didn't hear of, and that was just, absolutely fascinating. Did they destroy them? Did they hide them someplace? If anybody finds that stuff, that would be extremely interesting.
Well, another theory
Hmm.
is that Jefferson was telling them to look for evidence of Christians being here with the Indians, because if
Okay.
Christians were here, here's the cool stuff. There was a papal bull issued that people could claim country when they discovered it, so long as there were not Christians there.
Hmm.
However, if there were Christians there, then that country owned the land. And so when we were buying territory, he was worried that we were buying it from the wrong country
Okay.
because we may not be buying it from the person that actually owned it, the culture that actually owned it, that actually
Okay.
they were looking for Irish. That's what they were looking for. They were looking, at least the story that I heard, they were looking for people with an Irish background and or looking Irish as opposed to Indian. And
Hmm.
if they were to find them, then that would mean that Ireland actually owned this country, not who we
Not the
bought it
French.
from. Yes, and
Okay.
we borrowed money from the England to buy it from the French, the Louisiana Purchase. So they were looking for
Oh,
that
okay.
too.
Hmm.
And mammoths. For some reason, Jefferson was interested in woolly mammoths. That was another thing
Oh,
he was supposed to be looking for along the
well, if he looked more,
Mississippi.
he could have found some because there are.
They're here.
Yeah, there definitely.
Well, well, I thank you so much for spending time with me and
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
going through this wonderful book. It's a delight to read, and I hope lots of people
Mhm.
buy it because this was honestly one of the books that I could not put down. I usually try to pace myself through a book
Uh-huh.
and 20% a day, and I got
Mhm.
it done in a week. This one I sat through in 2 days.
Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I
Um,
kept finding more that
yeah,
oh yeah, I
yeah,
Kincaid's Cave, I love,
yeah.
and that all of that material is of course gone.
Have you
But
ever done spelunking?
no, I'm afraid of
No.
heights.
Oh, okay. I'm
No,
afraid of
no.
tight spaces. There's a lot of tight spaces involved in spelunking.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, no. I just where Kincaid's Cave is,
Hmm.
the theories goes that when the cave was actually in use, the
Hmm.
the river came up almost to the edge of the cave.
Yeah.
And that's why there's so many Egyptian names around as far as mountains and valleys and things like that, that it had to be an Egyptian influence
Hmm.
that gave everything the names that they had. And then,
Okay.
of course, the river ate away, and the mouth of the cave became inaccessible.
Uh-huh.
And I know that Scott Walter tried to get in. A lot of people have tried to get in, but the government will not let anybody near the mouth of that cave.
Hmm.
They say it's because the birds are roosting in it, and that's a lie.
Huh. What, an endangered bird or something?
No, it's I don't know eagles or whatever, but
Hmm.
but
Okay.
it's a no-fly zone as well.
Well, don't tell the birds.
Yeah, well, they're flying for sure. So just out of curiosity, what do you have coming up since you're in the production of books and stuff?
Oh, I just want there is another book that Jim Willis was working on that's coming up soon. It's called Bigfoot Sightings, and that's coming up. Let me check my schedule here. That will be released in August. So that's a Bigfoot Sightings, True Encounters. Um, and after that, from Visible Ink Press's Great Hauntings. That's not a Willis book; it's a Richard Estep, but that's
Hmm.
another one I think you would find fun to read. And of course, the books that you mentioned by Jim Willis are still in print, invisibleinkpress.com. You can get them there, or Amazon, or Barnes and Noble, any of
Oh
those.
yeah. No,
So,
it's worth getting. I mean, all of his books I've enjoyed, but
mhm.
this one especially because it's current. All of
Yeah,
this is still out there,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's regional. It's not, we're not talking Africa or India or Egypt. We're talking
Hmm.
U.S. You don't have to fly
Yeah.
anywhere. You can drive.
Oh, it's all U.S. and a little bit of Canada. Yep,
All
and Hawaii.
right, you
Well,
can. Well,
that's U.S., but yeah,
that's yeah, that one
yeah.
story definitely, but for the most part, it's all area that is accessible. So
Hmm.
so yeah, I Bigfoot sightings that's coming out when August.
In August. Yep, yep. That's a good one. That'll be the last book that he worked on for us.
How much of it did he write, and how much is there another author writing it too?
Yeah, it was finished off by Joe Kozlowski. I think Willis wrote about 80% of it, so it's mostly Jim Willis's book. Yeah, but you can certainly later, if you like, interview Mr. Kozlowski, and I'm sure he'll be happy to talk to you about it.
I will get in touch with you then.
Okay.
I want to thank you so much. If you'll just hang on while I play our exit, and
Mhm.
then let me sign off and stay right where you are. So
Okay.
thank you everybody. Please buy this book. It is so worth it.